two separate connections to the same database, but Ajax Packet Intelligence really doesn't care where the connection is being made, so long as the connection can be made to that database.
I did.
So server 1, I have my existing containers here. So under server 1, I have a container called a container called customers, and it is pointing to again the SAM Inc. database. However, on server 2, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new container, and this is going to be pointing at this SAM Limited database. We can pretend that it is a totally different database. It doesn't really matter. So we're just going to pretend again that this is going to be
basically you're using multiple companies in your own use.
different database.
Yeah, or if you're doing CRM in AppPack or HRMS in AppPack.
It's starting to really slow down here. I'm not sure why.
Is this a good product, do you think?
Hmm?
Do you think this is a good product?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my bad. I totally forgot to, with my excitement, put in the appropriate server name here again. So it'll just be a couple of minutes. Anyways, what's going to happen here? Actually, I already have a report going. I believe in my report manager. So while we're waiting for the connector, let's see if we can get the report manager up and running here. And again, under my customer reports, I do have a customer list that's showing me all of my customers. What I'm going to do when I create my second report is I'm going to point at the SAM Limited customer transactions. Heard the computer go ding. So I am going to have a look at my connector. I can see the error message, and I'm going to quickly correct it by right-clicking on server 2. I'm going to select properties, and I'm going to correctly enter my connection name, which is server 2, or sorry, my server name, which is W017 / SQL Express. Now I should be able to connect to this database. So again, after doing this, the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Check Test. It succeeded, so what I want to do now is I am going to create some data containers. And this is going to be called Customer Transactions. So I can't remember how this would go exactly. So let's say I want to have a look at my on the customer name. I want my invoice. So that's my ID INVC. Also my invoice date. So that is the date INVC, I believe. And my invoice amount.
What is the, just creating a container to pick up data from the second data source.
Oh, manually he's doing that.
I hope it likes my syntax. So I'm basically selecting 3 tables. Again, after creating a SQL query, the very first thing that I'm going to want to do, so I'm going to hit the apply button, is I'm going to check the syntax. So I'm going to click on check test. Okay, and that looks good. So again, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create one report. Actually, that report already exists. It's looking at the customers. And I'm going to create a second report that looks at the customer transactions. So I created my container. Before I can create the report, I have to use the report viewer. Or sorry, I have to create my expressions. In this case, I have data fields, so I'm going to specify the appropriate data fields here. What data fields do I have available? Well, I only selected these data fields for my statement. So again, this is an advantage of issuing SQL statements that they're quicker. It doesn't take that long to learn either. And if you're in this type of work, I suggest if you guys don't have experience in writing some SQL queries, there's a lot of good books out there, as I mentioned yesterday. The Rocks books, WROX, is really good. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I have my expressions. I'm going to create a report in my report viewer. My report manager, sorry. This report can exist in the same place. So customer reports, I'm going to create a brand new report. This is going to be a standard report. So again, this is going to be, in fact, a sub-report that I'm going to link to my main report. And this is going to be called, I'll call it customer transactions. So you can pretend that these are two separate sets of data. I'm linking this to what? Well, I'm going to be linking this to my customer transactions in Server 2. Click on Select All. Now for my customer transactions, again, I'm going to have a look at the columns. I want my ID customer to come first, followed by my invoice date, followed invoice number, followed by invoice date, followed by the invoice amount. And this is good. So what I can do is I can right click again on the appropriate report and I run it.
My bar to show up.
So I can see that this is we can pretend that this is a completely different set of data. And as a matter of fact, it is in fact a different set of data. So what if I needed to be able to get this information onto a single Excel spreadsheet? Is it possible for us to do? And again, the answer is yes, it is possible for us to do with Backpack Intelligence. How would I do that? What I can do is I can create a report linking these two reports together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin by creating another brand new report. Under Customer Reports, I'm going to right-click and I'm going to select Add New Report. And it says it's going to be a union report. I'm going to have to specify the name of my union report. Call it Consol Data. And then I'm going to click on OK. Now it's going to ask me what reports I wish to include in the union. So I do have one report called Customer List, and the other one called Customer Transactions. Let me just make sure that I don't have any other thing called Customer Transactions in any of the other that I've made here. So there's my built-in reports. There's nothing here. Okay, this is good. So again, I'm going to add my report here again. Union report. And this is going to be called Consol Data. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select my customer list and my customer transactions. And then I'm going to click on OK. You'll notice that the Consol Data has a left, to the left of it is a green icon, a semi-green icon indicating that it is again a union report. When I double click on Consol Data, It contains sub-reports. So if I double-click on my sub-report, these reports are the union sub-reports that comprise the main report. If I right-click on any of these reports and have a look at the properties, just a few things that you should notice. Again, you'll notice that there's something here called the output sheet number. So I can actually specify which sheet the report is going to go into, that any particular report is going to go into. Remember that the second sheet is reserved for parameters, so you don't normally want data going to that sheet. So I might want to say the customer list. I might want the data to go into sheet number 1. The customer transactions can go into the same sheet if you want, and that would only make sense if you have similar data with the same amount of fields going on that exist. Otherwise, you might want to have them go into separate sheets. So this is my customer list, and I want to have that in the first sheet. Report union report has no data. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. If I click on my customer transactions, what I want to do here is I want to have the output sheet number be sheet number 3. Okay, so I have my 2 sub-reports linked to my main report. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try running this report and let's have a look at what happens. So again, here in sheet 1, what do I have? I have my customer list, and this is coming from my Symantec database. Sheet 2 are the appropriate parameters, as stated before. And on sheet number 3, these are my customer transactions here. And this is coming from a different database. This is coming from Sam Limited. And how this data is to be arranged in the worksheet is now up to you. And again, you can use your awesome skills at Microsoft Excel to be able to rearrange and massage the data. Does anybody have any questions on creating this simple but powerful union report?
No, but you just solved a lot of my problems I was asking about earlier.
Okay.
About how to get things on multiple sheets.
Okay. That's good news. On the 17th, we're going to have a look. I was talking about a concept called pass-through variables. So basically, the concept of a pass-through variable is that when you create one report, at runtime, you're going to have a variable existing that is comprised of a certain value. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how that pass-through variable is used by one report and is passed on to the other report, affecting what exists on the second report. So you can apply additional filters based on that pass-through variable. Okay, if there's no other questions on these union reports, again, it's fairly simple to do. We now know how to get a lot of data that exists from different data sources into a single Microsoft Excel workbook. Does anybody here ever create or run any of these reports? For example, a financial statement. Do you ever have to run it by multiple? Do you ever need to run the same report on multiple databases? I'm not sure if you have clients that are like that, but they might have 2, 3, 4 databases, and might need to run the same financial report on each of those databases for different times. Would anybody want to be able to do things like have all of that data, that same data on the same databases exist on a single worksheet?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, let's have a look at the financial reports D. Would it be actually? Would that be a good one to show? Maybe that's not the best one to show here, but let's say a customer list here for the meantime. I'm not sure what would happen if you run a financial report D in this case. So in this case, we know how the customer list works. In my customer reports, they do have a report here called customer transactions. And when we run this on this one report, what happens? Well, basically, when we run this report, so if I click on run right now, which database is it going to look at? Do we know? In this case, yes, we know it's going to be Sam Inc. How do I know that? Well, I know that because with this report, this customer report that I just finished running, is pointing at a data source. Sorry, it's pointing at a connector whose container is under server 1. And server 1 specifically states that it's pointing to a specific server and looking at a specific database, which is SAMIC. So the report that it's running is always going to look off of SAMIC data. And again, it's very, very important to remember that. If I start SAM Limited, or if I start my own company, if I run the report manager from within that company, and if that report is pointing to a connection that is referencing a different database, I won't get the report that I'm supposed to be getting. It's going to be reporting numbers off of a different database, and obviously that's not very good. And of course, you can get around that issue by putting a check mark under use the auto connection system. All right, I want to talk about what are called Picklists and how you can get the same information out of multiple databases using at the same time using what's called a pick list. The concept of a pick list is very, very simple in this particular example that I'm going to use. So basically what's happening right now, whenever I create a report, what is happening is that TJAC Pack Intelligence program is connecting to a server in a database that I specified here. Using this pick list, what I can actually do is I can specify that when a report is run, when a connection is made to the database, I can actually, instead of using one database, I can actually have the user specify which database I connect to before the report is run. And I can actually give that user a list. I can also say that when I run a report, for example, this customer list that I'm running, I actually want you to run this report against 2, 3, or 4 different databases, all of them. Take all of the information that exists out of that database, and I want that information to be on a single Excel spreadsheet on the same page. So let me demonstrate how I'm going to do that now. For this to work, the databases should be using a single connection. So what I want to do is I'm going to continue to use my server 1 connection. We can ignore server 2 for now. So under server 1, so I have under server 1, I have 2 databases. I have 3 databases. I have SAMINC, SAMSys, and I have my own personal database called Tom Inc. So again, let's have a look at server 1. So in server 1, let's have a look at the connection properties. The connection properties, I'm not using an auto connection system. I'm hard-coding the server name into my list, and I'm also hard-coding the database name into my list. Oh, by the way, at runtime, it is possible for me, just as an aside, I can actually specify that the user tell me what server it is. So if I use the syntax prompt equals, basically what's going to happen is that Pack Intelligence is going to ask for the user to key in the name of the server. So I just changed the name of the server here. I'm going to click on the apply button. Again, it's prompt equals. If I was to do a check, let's have a look at what happens when I click on the check test button. When I click on this check test button, I am now asked, please enter the name of my server. So at this point in time, the user is going to put in the name of the server, hopefully the appropriate name of the server in this case, and they're going to click on OK. Act Intelligence is then going to ask if that information is to be cached for the remainder of the session, and if you want that information to be reused for the rest of the session. So in this case, I'm going to say no, just because. Now, what Sage Act Intelligence does is that it's going to verify the name of the server using the database name and the user ID. Note that if I want to put in a prompt for the database name and the user ID, it is possible for me to do that as well, using the same syntax that's defined up there. Pick lists. Okay, let's talk about this concept of pick lists. Before I do that here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the server name back in here. And I'm going to assume that I'm not going to have any problems with that connection. So right now I'm hard coding my database name in here. Wouldn't it be nice if I could be able to specify a list of which databases I should be reporting off of at runtime? Well, there is actually a way to do that, and I can create, again, what is called a pick list. The syntax is fairly simple. Again, I'm going to email you this information. So this is the syntax of a pick list. It's very, very simple. It's going to be pick list equals, followed by the appropriate text, followed by a semicolon, followed by the names of the databases. The description of the databases will come first. For example, sam space dash inc, followed by the name of the database in SQL Server. So this is the database ID. It'll be sam inc in my case. Second database that I have is SAM Limited, so then the SAM-Limited is basically a description. Note the 2 colons, SAM Limited. So if I wanted to add a third database to the list, no problem. What I can do is put in a semicolon, put in a name of my database here if I want, just to be consistent. I'm going to call this Tom Limited. Followed by the 2 colons, followed by the name of the database ID. I'm simply going to cut and paste this within my vector. So instead of putting a database here, as you can see, what happens is that I have my pick list here. And the password, I'm going to leave the password the same. So how does this differ? Well, basically, before a report is generated, again, I can mimic that situation by clicking the check test button. It's now asking me to choose a database that I wish to connect to. So it can be SAM Inc., SAM Limited, Tom Limited. Hopefully these databases exist. I'm going to click on OK. If the database does exist, first of all, it's going to ask me if I want to cache that information. And again, I'm going to say no. Okay, so it's not looking. It can't find Tom Limited. Okay, it's called Tom Inc. So Tom Inc. I'll quickly check this one more time. Again, as you can see, it's a good idea to check. Okay, good. So connect to that database. So again, basically what's happening is that the pick list command, I'm able to choose the database before the report is run. Now, there's a few other things that you can do as well. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to demo pick list A. If I use pick list A, what's going to happen is that a connection is going to be made to all 3 of those databases. So if I create a report whose report manager is pointing to that connection where pick list A is used, that means that that report is going to be run against all 3 of those databases. And the report information is going to be placed in a single spreadsheet, a single point on the worksheet. Okay, so one more time, I'm going to click on check test. I'm going to click on, notice that it doesn't really matter. What's going to happen is that all of them are going to be run when the report is run. Okay, so I have my database name. This is pick list A equals A. Again, the A means that everything is going to be processed. Oh, by the way, if you're ever working with the Act Intelligence, their help is very, very good. So, wanted to find out more on Picklist or anything else, what I can do is press F1. I took over this basic step yesterday, and I can type Picklist, and then click on List Topics. The appropriate topic will be listed here. So again, Picklist, I might want to check, for example, multi-select Picklists. And there's more information here under Dynamic Connections. So if I click on Dynamic Connections, it gives you even more information. Okay, so again, there's Picklist M. There's, I think, Picklist D as well, where you can choose the DSN.
It's 2 columns, isn't it?
But in this case, again, I'm going to use Picklist A, where a report is going to be querying multiple databases.
2 columns?
So again, in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my customers list in my report manager. Here's my customers transactions that I created earlier. Here's the customer list that was created earlier. If I use my customer list, I'm probably going to have some ID numbers that are the same. So obviously, SAMIC and SAM Limited make use of the same customer numbers. So I'm going to right-click on my customer list, and I'm going to select Run Sample. Run. What's happening? This report is now being sent to the connector. The connection information has instructions to query 3 different databases, namely SAMIC, SAM Limited, and Atomic. And again, as you can see, all of that information is being neatly returned in one row here. And again, this is just my customer list. What's being returned specifically depends on the link that is made in each separate database. Is this making sense?
Yes.
Has anyone tinkered with the Picklist here before?
No.
Obviously not.
Again, we can get more complex. Again, we can use pass-through variables within these Picklists. In this case, how am I going to be able to determine which connection is... What is this database coming from? Is there any way for me to find that out?
Can you add a field that shows the database?
Yeah. Absolutely, you can add. Yeah, what you can do is you can add a field. Unfortunately, in ACPAC, of course, it identifies the company name in every single database, right? I won't show this to you now, but one of the things that you can also do is you should actually know about this. But within my connector, if I right-click on the top field in the connector, there's something here called Show System Variables. So these are system variables that exist within, say, ACPAC Intelligence. And these variables can also be passed back as a parameter. You can actually even report off of these parameters. So these are all system variables here. So if I wanted to be able to list the appropriate database with a connection with, let's say, a company name or an account name, it is possible for me to do that. Now, for example, I can reference the company ID back as a pass-through variable. So what I would do is I would create a SQL expression that references this the system variable here. Such that whenever a particular information is taken out of the database, the appropriate database ID is attached to the appropriate field.
Right click.
It's live. Builds the information.
Okay, does anybody have any questions on that?
So here, here right click on the top. To the top, to the top.
No questions?
See that? Right click, show
Well, my
variables.
throat's taking a beating here, so I was thinking maybe this might be a good place to end. Dennis, do you have any questions at all?
You are no longer muted.
No, not right now.
Hey, so you're interested in the 17th training. Can I get you, if you don't mind, is that okay if I can bug you about, if possible, trying to play with this as much as possible? And any questions, again, send my way.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch all of that.
So if you had any questions on this, I'll encourage everyone here to play with it
Yep.
as much as possible. If you have any questions, if you can send them my way, that's great.
Will do.
Again, this is the first training session here, so I'm just trying to get as much information with respect to the types of questions that would be asked.
Okay, well, I'm going to run into some probably because I'm going to go and try and create a report that references ACPAC payroll and ACPAC HRMS.
Oh, that's awesome. Randy's going to be very happy to help you out on that one.
I'll bet.
Great. That's a great report idea there. Seriously.
Yeah, I don't do very much payroll myself, so but it is a great idea. And Andrea sounds like she's very keen as well.
Absolutely. Start working on it. However, I'm leaving a week from Saturday for 3 weeks, so I'm going to have a little bit of time before I leave, and I want to do as much as I can so I remember it when I come back.
I'm going to Hawaii in a couple of weeks myself, just for a week though, so.
We didn't need to hear that.
I'll be playing with this stuff. Okay, Jason, any questions from you? Any comments from your experiences? Do you want to share your experiences so far with the rest of the class? I'm not sure if he's still on the call. Hopefully he is. All right. Well, if nobody has any other...
Can you hear me okay?
Sorry, Jason. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate your time going through it. Basically, I think you answered that. A key question there, or a key functionality, I think, is
You are now muted.
on the different tabs.
Will there be any such an active?
There's a good example, I think, in the existing reports there, the dashboard report.
17.
Shows, I think, a pretty good example as well.
Oh, cube analysis.
Been
No,
playing with
then-
that quite a bit.
March 17th.
As far as pulling different types of data into one workbook and then building a dashboard.
Probably have something similar for that in time for our lab.
Yeah.
There's just one other thing. Ian, did you talk about the add-ins?
I did briefly, yes.
You did? Okay, so Dennis, does that answer your question that you had typed in on the WebEx chat?
You are no longer muted.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you were trying to point out there.
The add-ins, you had asked a question about having the ability to publish a report to the web on your chat in WebEx?
Yeah, no, I didn't see anything in the add-ins there, but I assume there is, so.
There is, yeah. If you go, Ian's going to go into the report manager. For any of the reports, Ian's already mentioned that there are various add-ins that come out of the box. This is something that comes out of the box with the report manager. There's the ability to run add-ins, as you can see there. And then when you click on those add-ins there's some Alchemex add-ins. They're still called Alchemex add-ins. One of the functionality there is an internet integration.
Okay.
You click there, you have the ability right there to publish the worksheet to the web.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay. You also have the ability to save the file to other locations. There's another add-in there that allows you to save the file, for example, to a server location. And then there's another place that gives you the ability. There's another add-in that gives you the ability to email the report out as an attachment, or just send an email out to people to let them know that the file has been updated.
Yeah, I remember that one. It was I didn't remember the web one though.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, good. So that answers that question.
Yes, it does.
All right.
Awesome. Well, if there's no more questions,
You are now muted.
keep playing with it as much as possible. Jason, do you run into any issues that we should know about this? I wouldn't mind knowing about them as well. Any challenges that you might have found? Yeah. So everyone have a great day, and I'll send you that information on with respect to the 17th class, probably about a week before it starts.
Good man.
Thanks very much, everyone. Hopefully you got something to get out of this course.